As sitting from the outside looking in, we know that Barca is a team in transition. We know that there is a learning process afoot, if you will. But sometimes I like to just compliment another competent La Liga team. And I made the claim that if Athletic Club had played like that against any La Liga team, they would have gotten 2 points minimum and beat most teams. Do you agree with that assessment, or do you think that's a bit of my Barca bias showing?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, Athletic were brilliant. I mean, they're very tactically well organized. They were pretty reliable. I mean, they didn't make any mistakes, and that's basically what you need, isn't it, against teams like Barcelona, to know that you're not going to slip up and just have that one moment of stupidity that costs you the points. And I think they did really well. I mean, Barcelona are always a tough team to play against, but I think Athletic, if they play like that every week, then they'll be fighting for Europe at the very least. Yeah.
But Sam, we know that Athletic Club will not be playing like that every week. The way they've shown over the last decade that even under
This is a
Marcelino,
problem, isn't it? Yeah.
right? They almost confused us last year with once he took over and they were flying high. Then you look at the results at the end of the spring and you go, I mean, no wonder that they always just barely finish in the top 10, but they also are never going to be relegated because they have enough support at this MMS. They take care of business with the altitude in the Pyrenees Mountains, and they get enough to get over the line every single time.
Exactly, yeah. And kind of looking at the stats, if you looked at the XG numbers when they had guys like Garitano, they were kind of performing way worse than you'd expect them to. And then Marcelino came in and they were playing way better than you'd expect them to. So, like, come on, Athletic, just give us like what we should expect, just a few weeks of average performances, and let's see what you're actually like as a team.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think they are number 8. I mean, that's why in the preseason prediction, I said there's basically a 1 through 8, and then there's the bottom 12. And I think that they are firmly number 8 in that top 8, if you will. But yeah, talking about the Barca part of that, it seems like it was Memphis to be the left winger when he was originally brought in. But now we see him a lot through the middle because of all the Barcelona forwards that are on that roster, he is the best hold-up play, clearly. So you're going to put him in the middle of the park for that. With Griezmann on the right and floating into the center. And Griezmann has obviously been, and he will continue to always be a talking point as far as his best position or the lack of his worst position at the top. And then Brathwaite on the left, basically keeping that spot warm for when Fati. And for Kool-Aid, you want some good news? Fati returned to light training today. So this is a monumental day. It's almost been 300 days since he was injured against Real Betis. So hopefully when he returns in about a month's time or less, again, it's basically Brathwaite keeping that spot warm. But what have you seen from the front three so far for Barcelona that might give you hope or also might give you some concern?
Well, Memphis has kind of exceeded all expectations for me. I mean, I saw him, I was at the preseason game when he made his debut up against Girona. And then he came on then and kind of really established himself kind of as like, I'm the guy, I'm here, I'm going to save Barcelona this season. It was like, well, this guy's confident. He looks kind of really kind of the kind of thing that Barcelona have lacked a little bit, other than Lionel Messi, kind of the confidence to kind of take men on, pick up the ball deep and just carry it and say, look, I'm going to try and do something. Let's see what happens. So that's been really good with Memphis. I think he's been brilliant so far. I think kind of creation and also finishing off. I mean, the finish against Athletic was a powerful shot, to say the least. Then the others, I mean, Braithwaite, it's so hard to say. Real Sociedad, he was very good. I mean, kind of the Braithwaite that we saw at Leganés, where he could kind of finish chances off, bit of a poacher in the box, and on almost what Barcelona need to kind of get in the box when teams are sitting deep and be able to finish chances. And then Antoine Griezmann, well, he's Antoine Griezmann, right? Where does he fit into this team? You kind of expected that with no Messi, he would be the one to step up. Maybe he'd be the one to play that false nine, a bit more like the role he played at Atletico. And it's not, it's gone to Memphis. So Griezmann, what role he plays, where he fits in, it's very hard to tell, but I don't think that right wing drifting in role is necessarily going to get the best out of him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And at the end of the day, for Griezmann, it comes down to those numbers that people want to see and can he deliver on those numbers. So if he finishes the year with 20 goals, or if he finishes with, I mean, last year he was 12 in the Liga, but if he finishes with 14 the Liga goals, then likely he's done enough on the defensive side of the ball as well to shore up that defense. And as we spoke about, even losing Messi with Fati returning, hopefully, even if Fati returns at 50% of his best, you do believe that there's enough goals in that attack to get Barcelona in this race, in the title race, and potentially get them on the line. But defensively, that's where the worries are. Then you had Piqué on the left after more than a decade playing as the right center back. And then Eric Garcia Araujo on the right, Langley or Umtiti on the left. But really, at this point, I think the fourth and the fifth center backs, and they're both the only two left-footed on the roster. Then Neto is a top shot stopper and decision maker, but his feet can't necessarily do what he wants them to do. And we saw that against Athletic Club that it's not going to work. But to me, I've been kind of pushing down the kicking the can down the road that Neto every week he shows me that I think he deserves to be the number one shop stopper at another club, that another club would be happy to have him between the sticks, because his feet don't necessarily fit what Barca needs. And then the talking point I think comes out away from Eric Garcia. And this is where my bias shows, because I've been a staunch defender of Eric Garcia. And whether it was the personal matters with his grandfather passing away right prior to kickoff. And then I also would argue on the other side that Inaki Williams is going to make almost anyone look silly when he's moving like that. I don't think there's any defender. It's basically what Karim Benzema and then Inaki Williams as number 9s who are going to cause a ton of damage. And we'll see what Luis Suarez has this year, and Gerardo Moreno as well, but he's winger and forward, right? So just when I say number 9s, I think you think Karim Benzema and Inaki Williams.
Yeah, I mean, Inaki Williams, we've seen him trying to tear Gerard Piqué apart a few times, and that was Piqué kind of at his best. And I mean, the pace, the strength, yeah, he can't finish, but if he could finish, then he'd have 30, 40 goals a season. Yeah,
and for Garcia, I mean, being tasked with Inaki Williams, I don't know how many times in the Liga he's going to have such a difficult one-on-one personal assignment. So I think is he ready for the big time yet? Absolutely not. I mean, but I also don't think his physical limitations, which we've seen so far, are not going to improve or to get better. Yeah, you can't get faster. Like, he's never going to be Araujo, but he's also not going to be. I mean, he had a disastrous game. I can admit, as someone who defends in it, it was the Twitter likes to say a disaster class, but yeah, it was one that he's going to forget. But it was also, I think, a low point in the young player's career, and he's only going to get up from there. I think that's I mean, I don't want to be too crazy, but I mean, they scored one goal. I mean, it was one goal that Athletic Club put, and he was partially at fault for it. I mean, not even partially. He was 80% at fault. He lost his marker, and Inigo Martinez headed home the goal. But even being culpable for the one goal, I think that might be one of the worst performances we see from him, and I'll take that.
Yeah, no, I kind of share a similar point of view, to be honest, to you. I mean, I think he's a very good player. I mean, I think people are forgetting almost that he's kind of a 20-year-old kid who basically didn't play for the last 12 months so that he could force through this Barcelona move. Finding out his grandfather's died minutes before kickoff, that's got to be tough on anyone, any experience, any age. And this is only his second appearance for Barcelona, only second appearance in this back four. I mean, alongside Gerard Piqué. So he's still learning. He's still very young. He's still going to improve a lot. And I mean, yeah, okay, it wasn't his best day. And there were kind of the momentary lapses of concentration. I think that's where the goal came from, because watching it back, first time I watched it back, I almost thought maybe that wasn't Eric Garcia's man, because you saw him so close to Dani Vivian, who was screening him. You thought, no, Eric Garcia can't have let himself be blocked off that much by Dani Vivian. And then you realize that he did, but it was just that kind of lapse of concentration that you think, okay, but for a 20-year-old kid who's in this context, the whole situation with his grandfather, you can't blame him for that. I mean, it's a tough one. And maybe you think about Ronald Koeman, maybe that wasn't the back four that he wanted to go with it against Athletic Club. Maybe in another day, with that news about Eric's grandfather, he makes that change. But knowing that Gerard Piqué is not 100%, you don't want to make that change and then have to risk making another change. And then all of a sudden you've got your third and fourth choice centre-backs on the pitch when that wasn't the starting plan. You haven't trained for that all week. So I think Eric will come good. I think he's shown some promising signs already. And I mean, we forget that he's only 20 years old. I mean, this guy isn't going to be at his best for another, 6-7 years. And there's another 10, 12, 13 years that Barcelona can get out of him. So I think there's huge room for improvement. And he's not had a bad start. Athletic was a disastrous performance, but I think he'll learn from that and he'll take that and improve with it going forward.
Yeah, if he's around for 13 years, I think it's risky for me to say that'll be his worst match. I think that in 13 years, he might have a worse match. But I do I do certainly put it on Ronald Koeman that Eric Garcia probably shouldn't have been in that position, in that I would have started Araujo and I would have started Emerson even for Dest. I think Dest was hot and cold in that match. He was isolated a lot. And Frankie de Jong, he was able to submit, not to say a masterclass, but Frankie de Jong was the best player on the field. And that's one of the big reasons why he was 1-1. I think that game would have been worse if not for Frankie de Jong. But he's being tasked with getting sideline to sideline to help Dest on overlaps and to defend for Dest. He was playing in the right back defensively quite a lot because Dest would get forward. And then offensively, he was being tasked to dribble with the ball or to find the pass that would break the line. Or he was also being tasked with those diagonal balls to get to Pedri to the left side so he could open up space for Memphis. And yeah, de Jong was, practically perfect in that match. And Barcelona are going to need him to be one of the top 10 midfielders in the world to contend for the Liga and to get far in Champions League and all those things. And I do, again, pin it on Koeman a little bit for the decisions he made with the squad so far that he has. But I think for all the helped their, I mean, for all the fear and the fire burning about Messi, the depth of Barcelona is why people have said that I don't know why they're not going to be in the league race, because they do have the depth where if Lenglet is a fourth choice center back, that is perfectly fine for a club like Barcelona to have Clement Lenglet. The problem is when he is your second, when it's Piqué and Lenglet together and you have not much pace at all, and you're caught out a lot on the counterattack because those profiles just don't fit together, as both by age and by their physicality or their physical metrics, if you will. So, but having him as your fourth, I mean, I'll take that. I mean, even if Titi is your fourth, because there are calls if he's going to stay at the club, I don't see how Titi and his ability to pass the ball isn't going to be, a fit. I mean, do you see him potentially winning that fourth center back or third center back if Eric Garcia falls down the depth chart? Do you find him potentially taking that spot from Lenglet?
I don't think so. I mean, I quite like Lenglet. I mean, he's not the elite centre back that we hoped he might go on to become at Barcelona, but I think he's better than Titi as well. I mean, everyone says that his knees improved a lot, but when just watching him when I was at the pre-season game against Girona, watching him warm up, it was like he was very much going through the motions, walking around, very slow pace. So he's clearly managing himself to get in to the team. But I mean, again, if Titi is your fifth choice centre back, you compare that to Real Madrid, for example. Who's Real Madrid's fifth choice centre back? I mean, I don't even know if they have a fifth choice centre back. So I think Barcelona do have that kind of squad depth, and Titi, I think he's got difficult chances, a slim of him ever kind of playing too much this season. Maybe the odd Copa del Rey game if he doesn't leave, but that is kind of representative of the squad depth that Barcelona have. That maybe is very overpaid and everything, but maybe just for this season until they can shift all of the deadwood, that could help them if there is a title challenge.
For sure. And I think as much as we're going to get to Real Madrid, and Kool-Aid would love to hear all the negative things you have to say about Real Madrid. But first, I want to talk about the team that I think should be seen as a title favorite, who has the inside track. And when I looked and I'm watching all of these the last 2 weeks, I'm watching all of these matches. We'll talk about Sevilla again after Real Madrid, but with the exception of Atleti and Sevilla, there are huge red flags, I think, for every team in the Liga. And you could argue that even Sevilla has some question marks themselves because of the way that they seem to perform sometimes. And we know that eventual slide is coming, and you can circle the ways of which that slide is going to come to fruition. But for Atletico Madrid, I wanted to particularly talk about their win against Elche. 1-0 win against Elche. And I always feel bad because I do heap on Elche more than any other team. I look up and down their talent. They're easy to do, and I go, how are they going to survive? And yet last year they found a way to survive. And even this year, I look at Rayo and compare them to Elche and say, Rayo's more talented than Elche, but still Elche with their 0.17 XG in that match still had a shot against Atletico Madrid. And I think the more worrying sign for Atletico, but still it isn't worrying because Atleti by design, their expected goals in that game never went above 1.5. They were always going to win that match 1-0 because Elche's was never more than 0.17. They always were prepared to win that match 1-0. Yeah. But I think the worry is they won too many games last season through the resolve of Luis Suarez. He did win them a lot of points. And now you're trusting a 34-year-old striker who you don't know when that decline is coming. It looks like they do have Mateus Cunha, a Brazilian striker from Hertha Berlin, coming in. And then it seems like Saul might not be back. And it seems like he might be headed to Premier League. That said, Rodrigo de Paul, the worry would be that he wasn't going to fit in, but that seems like a complete non-issue. He was probably the best player against Elche. And then the other worry would be Marcus Llorente not being able to repeat last season. Because for me, and I longtime Kool-Aids of this pod know that Marcus Llorente is, I think, in Spain. I'm just off the top of the head. I think he would be the player that I would take to want to bring to Barcelona more than any other. I just think he's just a great footballer. He does so many things for you at a high level that I would trust him in any side to fit and do something. But he might not be able to repeat his second leading goal scorer on Atleti last year.
Yeah, I'm fairly optimistic with Marcos Llorente, to be honest. I mean, I think he's such an athlete, such a well-rounded player. I mean, we've seen him play almost everywhere. I mean, even on Sunday up against Elche, I mean, we saw him start the game at right back and he ended up as kind of a right forward. So, I mean, it's very versatile with Marcos Llorente. I think that kind of helps him because he can adapt his game. So when he's not in the best run of form or his confidence is a bit lower, you see him kind of adapt his game, drop a little bit deeper, do something a bit different. I think last season was an extraordinary season for him because he outperformed all of his statistics. None of his statistics said that he would have as many goals or as many assists, but he did. So this season, I think it will be interesting to see where he will go long term. I think he's still got the option of doing that, maybe not quite to the same level of of outperforming his statistics as he did last season, but I think he'll do that. And then the concern for Atleti has got to be what you said. I mean, Luis Suarez, he's not getting any younger. He's a great striker, and if the ball falls his way, then he's going to finish it 9 times out of 10. But how often is he going to be getting into those positions now? I mean, he had the Copa America in the summer, which I really don't think has helped him. So he came on Sunday, played 30 minutes, and even by the end of that 30 minutes, he was looking worn out. It was like, come on, Luis. I mean, 30 minutes against Elche when you're 1-0 up, like, if you're struggling now, how are you going to be when it's 90 minutes against Real Madrid or Barcelona or Sevilla? So I think we need to see how Mateus Cunha does when he comes in. But that's the challenge that Atleti have this season is we can't rely on Luis Suarez's goals. Even if it's just this season, maybe we can get away with it. But next season, Luis Suarez is going to be another year older. Maybe he's already left next summer. We need to have a long-term goal-scoring option, whether that's Mateus Cunha, whether that's João Felix, and he steps up, which I'm optimistic for him as well. I think this season he could really make his mark. But there's definitely that kind of role which is up for grabs. I think every other role in the Atleti squad, they've got kind of ticked off. The goalkeeper, best in the world. Defenders, we've got plenty of fullbacks, centre-backs, some of the best in La Liga. Midfielders, several different profiles and options. And then it's the forward where we really kind of need that player to step up.
Yeah, and I think it was funny reading some of the preseason prognostications about how Atleti would potentially, Diego Simeone is going to bring something new, a different wrinkle because they're now flying high. No, Diego Simeone was always going to play the same way. I think anyone who said otherwise was was out of their mind.
Exactly,
I don't know. Do you think, Sam, that another year of just suffocating an opponent, even like an Elche, where there were times against Elche that Atleti have 10 guys behind the ball? And I know that that's the way that they're going to win the title. It's just a difficult sell for me to say that is going to work again and again and again. I mean, we even saw against Elche that if they get a bit less lucky, if they have 7 or 8 games where the opponent exceeds their expected goals, and I know they're not looking at just the metrics, but if they have 7 or 8 matches where the other team overperforms their expected goals, now they have way more draws. And now Barcelona and Real Madrid have taken, the 2 or 3, because we know what's going to happen and now I transition to Real Madrid. We know what's going to happen to Real Madrid and to Barcelona. They're going to win some games by 4 or 5, and they're going to be shocked on the road at Levante, right? Like that's what's going to happen this year to both of those 2 big giants.